everybody. Welcome to Help Me Understand, the podcast where we're finding biblical clarity through conversation. This is episode number 36. Today we're going to talk about what happens when a pastor is self-imposed, removed from ministry, disgraced pastors, fallen pastors. And so a sad and sobering topic, but one that we feel like is important for us to address today.
Yeah, these things pop up from time to time, sadly. I want to say, we should consider all the faithful men and women out there serving the Lord, and that ought to be our dominant theme.
Right.
And so often what gains more publicity is one who falls.
Yeah.
And yet, I don't think that's necessarily the right approach, right? No, it's a big deal when someone who has built their entire life on trust. This whole thing is kind of based on the idea that it works.
Right.
Right? Like the gospel is true, and it's going to transform your life in a way that will sustain you for the long haul. And so you got to wrestle with, does it work?
Yeah.
Or does it not? And those guys are just the ones who.
Yeah, the scary thing is that you put so much trust and so much faith, you give so much credibility to a person, rightfully or unrightfully so, and you have such a high opinion of them that for me it's not just the sadness of watching this happen in somebody's life, but oh no, like if this happened to them and they seem to be the most incredible leader and strong in their faith, and if this happened to them, then I have no shot, personally. So
yeah, I think when you when you've come to faith in Jesus and days start to pass by, you'll bump into this on a really up close level, and you'll bump into it on a celebrity level.
Yeah.
I remember as a college student, our youth pastor had an affair, and that was the first time I think it had ever hit me super hard, probably the hardest it's still ever hit me.
Yeah.
From up close. I remember the first time as well, I was working at a church, and our church I was serving had a good relationship with a large church in Texas, and there were all these stories of pastors. It was probably the first time I even thought of high-profile pastors. I don't know what I thought about a youth pastor in a church of 3,000 people. It was pretty high profile, and it just didn't make the news. But it shocked all these guys, and it hurts when it happens, because you have placed so much faith, rightly or wrongly, in them.
Yeah. I mean, you and I have multiple text messages of, you open social media and it's just your heart sinks, and it's like, man, now what?
Yeah.
So
So Ravi Zacharias is kind of a whole deeper level.
Yeah.
If you don't know who Ravi Zacharias is, probably a 50-year ministry, guy from India, came to faith in Christ. It's been a good portion, I think, of his childhood, if I remember correctly, in Canada. So he wasn't spent all his time in India, as I remember right. That could be wrong. I should have gone back and looked more at his testimony, but becomes this world-renowned apologist.
Yeah.
Which is a fancy term for a guy who knows how to put the arguments together to defend the faith. So attacks from the outside. What about this? What about that? And kind of able to take the whole Bible and make sense out of reason and logic and philosophy, and brilliant.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is a guy who, he started a conversation that was set up for him to not debate, but just to lecture on the campus of Harvard, was called the Veritas Forum, and it became it was viral. Everybody wanted to hear him kind of explain and defend Christianity at what was a really in a hostile environment. And the Veritas forums even continue today to be like, oh man, Tim Keller has spoken at this, and David French has spoken at this, and so his legacy of giving intellectual credibility to Christian faith is something I think that most any guy has a story of, oh man, I heard this message from Robbie and it was just, this made so much sense. It gave me so much clarity.
Yeah, I've said many times, AM radio was a huge part of my development.
Yeah.
When I was 18 to 25 or so, I would just listen to Ravi on Let My People Think was his program. And so now, so he died last year, and posthumously has been proven to be not who he claimed to be.
Yeah.
In so many ways. It turns out, had been, so he was part owner in a couple of spas, which is weird. I mean, you can just call it what it is.
Yeah.
For a pastor to own a spa, it's just a strange thing. People were around him who apparently didn't think much of that, or at least didn't question.
Right.
So it turns out he was abusing, manipulating, controlling. He was even going so far as to say, as this man who has this reputation for being able to make arguments, he was making arguments for multiple wives from the Old Testament with these ladies who
Yeah.
were there to, as it turns out, for him to simply abuse and even some would say rape.
Yeah, I think that's a key element of what we're talking about, because there's no way to separate really who he was as a person from the message that he kind of lived out. And so it's not, physical and sexual abuse is so tragic and awful and horrible. But then to add in this layer of spiritual abuse, it's like the most important thing that we can ever talk about is eternity and what it means to understand the scripture, and then to use that in a way to abuse someone else. It causes us to really question, like, even that underlying faith. Like, wait a second, I trusted this person to tell me the most important thing in this world, and then it turns out they were leveraging that for physical pleasure, for abuse sake, and is really, really nasty.
Yeah, sick. I praised him at his death, online at least. It was so formative in being able to say, okay, what we believe actually doesn't have to be, your brain doesn't have to be checked at the door, as they say.
Yeah.
So call it what it is, right? He was a liar. He was an abuser. He was more gifted publicly than his private character could carry him.
Yeah.
Even though he died with these things hidden.
Yeah.
It's come out that a few years back there was a situation that seems not thoroughly investigated, and lady was just kind of written off and made to feel shame.
Yeah.
So he was a liar and abuser. He was a hypocrite. It does damage to the cause of Christ. So we would say that. We would say this is a reminder that victims of any kind must be heard. With leadership comes the weight of when someone maybe even falsely accuses,
Right.
that they have to be heard out.
And that's
Listen too well.
That's so huge, I think, because it's not, what can happen is to say, all it takes is to be accused. You don't even have to be guilty. Or, man, just the day and age in which we live, this is one of the things you've got to really be careful of. Yeah, okay, I totally get that. But even that way of thinking is somehow to dismiss the importance of creating these really helpful pathways so that communication is heard, and that people have an opportunity to bring some things into the light, and not just go, well, this is just a marker of the times and the day. And it's really like to with intentionality to say, all right, I want to set up a way for people to not be taken advantage of. Yeah. It's not just because our world is so fallen. It's because this is a safeguard for both sides. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We believe the Bible makes the case for plural leadership, especially in the church, that a group of leaders come together to weigh in and listen well and examine all the angles and process it, bring some assessment of the situation together so that collective wisdom can be heard. In that there is accountability, right? Accountability that never can be set aside.
No matter who it is, no matter how successful, how great things are going, you never want to sacrifice accountability for what damage can be done, or success sake.
Yeah. You need structure. Nobody wants to talk about structure.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants, in our day and age, we want to think about the heavy-handedness of authority, and we want to push all that off until there's a moment where, it turns out that authority would have actually been really wise.
Yeah.
Accountability can't be, you can't go around it. It can't be minimized.
Yeah, and that's something I think that I'm weary of hearing this story of a high-profile, charismatic, big personality, and all of the realizations of we should have known better, we should have had a structure in place, we should have had a system in place. It's like, how many times are we going to say would have, could have, should have, and not have a ministry go, we're going to call this into question before it gets to the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
We're going to keep ourselves accountable. We're going to set up some, and maybe you don't hear those stories because it works. Mm-hmm. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Years ago, I remember being so convinced by this argument. I heard a pastor say, if I go to the dentist, I don't want him to have to run by me what he should do in this situation. And it was like, you need people around you who know exactly what you do and who you are and how, kind of give benefit of the doubt. And I get that. I mean, I think that in the name of control, churches particularly have been, taken advantage of by people who just wanted power.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But there is wisdom in counselors from all kinds of perspectives who know things you don't know.
Right.
I know things that some of our elders don't know theologically. I've been trained. I have a degree. I've written papers. I've listened to, it's what I do every day. But we're not talking about just theological, argumentation here. We're talking about this whole thing is based on the idea that it works.
Yeah.
Right? This is to keep us all in a place where we follow Jesus together. We bring our strengths and weaknesses to the table.
Yeah.
And in the name of success in one area, it appears the board of the Ravi Zacharias International Ministry has compromised what they might have known to be true in protecting the man along the way. So it's him. It's all on him, right? But the board has some part to play in it.
I mean, there's always an issue regarding the person who does commit the sin. I mean, think about in an addiction sense, you have the person who's addicted to the substance, and then you have their enablers. And so both need to be called into question, but ultimately the damage is being done by the person.
Right.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about someone who has been deeply impacted by Ravi Zacharias? Okay, so I see this on social media, people who have come to faith in Christ listening to him. I think maybe in our part of the world and generationally, he may be from a different I don't know how many Arrowhead people are. I got one text about this.
Yeah.
I don't know how many Arrowhead people are really going to bed last night thinking about the Ravi report. But what about someone who has been impacted by anyone on some level, even maybe led to Christ by someone who eventually, is proven to be not who they said they were?
Yeah, I mean, it's not Ravi Zacharias, but it's other guys for me that, I'm counting on what they're saying to be really true for my spiritual formation, and then on the back end going, I think about like the book Dangerous Calling by Paul Tripp now is infamous because the blurbs on the back, 3 of the 4 guys who wrote some sort of, what do you call that? They're endorsing it.
Endorsement.
Yeah, so they're 3 of the 4 endorsers are now former guys. Like, they're guys who have, disqualified themselves from ministry. Does that mean that what they said isn't true? And I just don't think this is a yeah but moment. This is not a chance for us to go, yeah, but you can't just, you got to separate the message from the messenger. You got to separate the art from the artist, and everybody's fallen, everybody's messed up. It's not that. It's how do I process this really impactful part of my life and now knowing what I know? Mm-hmm. And I don't think you can divide it out, for me personally.
Right. Yeah. I think that, there is that question of, it actually matters.
Yeah.
Right? That's a book about how to stay healthy in ministry.
Ironically enough.
And 4 of the 5 have left ministry.
Yeah.
Or have some public falling. So you can't say it's on, it's just on you, right? So you gotta move on and kind of press on. A couple passages of scripture really come to mind for me. I really don't like this verse. It's one of those places where you're like, man, there's got to be a better way. And yet here it is right there in the Bible that in Philippians 1, Paul has been, of course, imprisoned for his faith, and there's still people out doing their thing. Like, still people are listening to these other guys preach, and all the success is surrounding them, and they even maybe are saying things that aren't true of him. And what he says, verse 16, speaking about those people, or verse 15, to be sure, some preach Christ out of envy and rivalry, but others out of goodwill. So some have false motives. Verse 17, the others proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, thinking that they will cause me to trouble in my imprisonment. And in verse 18, what does it matter? Only that in every way, whether from false motives or true, Christ is proclaimed, and in this I rejoice. So he says somehow what matters is the proclamation. Let's not run away from the pain of Ravi today after yesterday's bombshell report. It hurts.
Yeah.
But what we have to arrive at eventually is the truth is the truth. The truth is not contingent upon our lives, right?
Yeah.
Certainly, we can point and say great damage has been done when it isn't. When we're not consistent, and then also, right, that somehow the truth is strengthened in some way when we see faithfulness through the years. That's what we thought we were experiencing with Ravi.
Yeah.
And so if you say it that way, well then, okay, well hold on to that, right? But ultimately, we've got to celebrate that the truth is proclaimed.
Yeah. I think one of the things that makes Paul a genius, just as a thinker, is his ability to really think into the future. And I think that's like, that's a perspective he has, almost that you only get thinking 10 years down the road. 10 years down the road. This is not going to have the same just emotional weight to have learned this. Most of the pain and the angst is caused by the surprise as much as it is the content of the revelation. But Paul's saying, okay, what we have to get to is just, all right, slow down, think. And God was using this person all along, even if they didn't want to be used, even if they had a terrible motive. God was still using this person. And that doesn't discount the work that was done. And that doesn't mean we wish things hadn't gone another way. But God was always at work in this person's life. It just means that they were given over to the ways and the things of this world, and ultimately it led to their undoing.
Yeah. Somehow he's even able to feel that, it seems, now.
I know. That's
crazy.
It's insane, that being able, and I think that's the perspective that you have when you live in the reality of live as Christ, death is gain. All right, he's very present in his ministry, but is also very forward-thinking in his perspective.
Yeah. The other passage that comes to mind, this isn't even in our notes, but it's just hit me while we sit here. 1 Timothy 5, Paul writes again as he's really training Timothy and raising him up to be a pastor. In verse 17, the elders who are good leaders are to be considered worthy of double honor, especially those who work hard at preaching and teaching. So, it's good for us to look to people and consider and honor them when they're faithful. Then he talks about accusation against an elder, and he's saying you can't just have someone bring something out and it not get examined.
Yeah.
You need 2 or 3 witnesses. And turns out that didn't work for Ravi, right? Like, there were no witnesses.
Yeah.
There was him and her in the private room.
Right.
And we could spend time, and maybe we'll do an episode later of the wisdom of
the more we talk, the more I think that's got to be addressed.
Yeah.
So.
But now what's happened, you do have 2 or 3 witnesses who are all saying the same thing happened to them. And so his conclusion is verse 20, publicly rebuke those who sin so that the rest will be afraid.
Yeah.
So you get double honor with faithfulness, and you get public rebuke for unfaithfulness. And that's where those are leadership's 2 options.
Yeah. That's the only 2.
Yeah. High honor, public rebuke.
Yeah.
And explicitly for the purpose that we would learn, right? That others will be afraid.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, for every Christian leader, send some chills up your spine to think that your secrets could be exposed one day when you've had a lifelong public ministry. You're not paying attention. No,
also, if you think that you're the exception, you are not.
Yeah.
There's no exception to this. Nobody gets to have their secrets die and nobody ever find out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're talking about just right now, just that, and maybe there's so many more, but we're talking about just a handful of accusations.
Mm-hmm.
We know, like they all corroborate, they all make sense. Just who knows how much of a part of his life this was, but it's the right thing for the world to do. It seems at this point to stand back and point the finger, and that's sad.
Yeah. So sobering conversation, but at the same time, I think clarifying, because we do need to examine how much credibility somebody deserves. And also think about the way we think about pastors. It really matters. And so I would just say, it's if you're a pastor, is somebody who is worthy of double honor, then do that. As much as it's explicit for you to publicly rebuke a pastor who has fallen in some way, it's just as explicit for you to honor one who has not. And so both of those very helpful things. Hopefully this has been helpful for you, has been for me, and look forward to our next conversation next week. So we'll see you then.